So, wanted to kind of, I don't know, as you might have heard me say in one of my earlier videos, I practice Zen. And there was a talk today that, well, I don't remember exactly what it was about, but what came alive for me out of all of that is how some people are, I don't know, upset. I don't know if it's fearful, bothered with the current climate, I guess, kind of thing. Not environment, but, global, political, all that kind of stuff. That's really, a lot of people are feeling deeply disturbed by things that are happening. And it's interesting because, without making this political, because I don't want to, I've never really abided in one camp or the other over any long period of time. But what arrives for me out of all of it, within the realm of this, like, what's going to happen and all the stories that get written about how terrible and what people should be doing and how could you be so stupid, and all of those forms of communication, really, which is interesting to me in the sense that, do you think that's going to change someone? I have a friend who's, kind of makes that point. They're not rational, and I try to tell them, you're being, and it's like, and when has that ever really worked with anyone? Oh, hey, you're incredibly stupid. Oh, wow, thank you. It's like, I just didn't know. Now that I know, I can completely change how I live my life. I don't know if that conversation has ever happened between, people. So, but all of those stories that get written about what might or might not, be the case, or what should have been the case. There was a long time ago, I watched this thing from Michael J. Fox as he was getting Parkinson's, I think. And I don't know, just sitting in a doctor's waiting room or something, this thing came on. And I remember him talking something along the lines of, I guess they had asked him, what are you doing about it? How do you feel, or whatever? And if I remember right, clearly paraphrasing, or at least this is how I took it, is his reply was something to the effect of, if I have it, if I worry about it all this time as they're trying to figure out whether I've got it or not and what that's going to do to my life or something, and it turns out I don't have it, I've spent all this time, creating this negative world, so to speak, kind of thing. And on the flip side, if I worry about having it and all the terrible things and live in that terrible world, and in, a few months or 6 months or a year or whatever, I'm told I've got it and it's inevitable, all I've really done is moved that inevitable moment into my life today. I've moved it to the left by 6 months or a year, during a time when I didn't have to live like that. And I guess what I'm kind of trying to express out of what really struck me in his response is that whether things really are going to be bad or not, if they're not bad in this moment, if we live like they're already here, we've really just created an artificial terrible moment in our life far earlier than it needed to exist. And if we're wrong, then we just kind of tortured ourselves for a while for no reason at all. And that's one side of this in the knowing and the rest of it. If that's your take on what this climate is currently like. Another side of it is, you know, what's wrong with chaos and burning it all down? Is that really a problem? There's lots of things in nature. Fires come and burn down massive forests, and forests return. Is there really a problem? Or, you know, if you've got cancer or something like that, and they have to cut out a whole lot, and more than they have to cut out healthy tissue as well, just to make sure they got it all. Sometimes you have to destroy a lot to fix something. And, you know, again, whether you believe that or not, if you believe there is any corruption at all, kind of thing, then, you know, because maybe you don't. Maybe you think, you know, politics and bureaucracies have been perfect our entire lives, and there's no problem. And good on you if that's what you believe. But if you think there's at all room for improvement, then at least my experience has been, for where I work and the rest of it, that change doesn't happen with the same tools and ways of thinking that I've always had. I.e., if I think certain areas of the business are bloated and slow and obstacles to everything we try to do, there is no one I can talk to within the business that will ever do anything that meaningfully changes that, other than eventually wear me down so that I simply accept that that's the way it is. So for anything external to come in and completely gut that, would mean that, you know, potentially innocent people are going to get hurt. And that's the human side of this climate, if you will, that, yes, could innocent people get hurt? Yeah. I think it's actually an inevitability rather than a question. But at the same time, could that remove all kinds of obstacles and problems and corruption that might exist under the surface? Yeah, maybe. And you might be like, no, and you don't understand because, and there have been terrible things in history that have happened, that are similar to this kind of thing. And okay, well, let's go with that for a minute. And the analogy that comes to mind for me is that visual of the phoenix born from the ashes. It's a very, in my eyes at least, it's a very positive image of this fiery phoenix rising up, and just, wow, that's amazing. But what I don't ever hear anyone talk about in that visual, in that image, if you will, are the ashes and what happens to create the ashes. We talk about this moment after, but not what it takes to transform what was into a foundation for what can be. And that, I mean, a pile of ashes, to really sit and think, I don't know about even think about, but really just feel into what is a pile of ashes, whether, you know, you've burned logs in a fireplace or whether you've experienced fires of California or any other places kind of thing. That is a very out of control event that leaves nothing untouched. And it's interesting how it feels to be in the middle of something that is radical transformative change. And I don't mean to imply that it's good or doesn't hurt or any of the rest of that. It's like, no, there's literally nothing left but ashes. It gets rid of everything, transforms everything. And only then, is there room for something to move? Does the light come forth from darkness? And so whether you're into creating ashes or want to resist it, what I've noticed in my own life is I don't think I've ever had a moment in my life where I've actually been comfortable, and that comfort has been an inspiration for me to change something. Comfort for me is numbing, I guess. I don't mean to turn it into to demonize comfort necessarily, but I guess what I'm trying to express is that I don't feel a stimulus to change anything when I'm comfortable, unless someone challenges my comfortable existence. In which case, then massive resistance and pushing and this resistance to change. Really, it's kind of like inertia, I mean, when I'm comfortable, I'm at rest and I want to stay at rest. And when change happens, and pushes me off of wherever I was until I am now forced to be doing something, whether that means looking for a job or, writing about, because I guess another thing is, and and I'm no authority on art, but not even close. But my impression about all forms of art is some of the absolute best, most touching, beautiful pieces of art are from tortured artists. There is no comfortable artist that produces deeply touching, amazing works. And so the idea of pain is one where I don't want it. I don't. I can feel the resistance to pain the same as everyone else, I guess. But what I have noticed in my Zen practice, which has led me to many very dark places full of despair and helplessness and hopelessness, is only in those places would anything move. Not that it had to move, because that was happening, but in that moment where I completely gave up and gave in and actually allowed myself to have that moment as it was happening and really look into it from an enter here perspective. Oh, where's the gate? Right here. If you're feeling all the difficulty and don't know how to find whether it's compassion, the world, sanity, whatever your view of the world is, if you can't find refuge there, that's the perfect place to enter, because that's where things can move if you're open to it. And so that for me are the many many piles of ashes that have occurred in my life, as I've kind of mentioned, in sort of these last 10 years. everything kind of leading up to that was an effort to encapsulate, isolate, create that concrete bunker with, climate controlled concrete bunker that that kept everything good enough, comfortable. And I don't know. I guess I kind of feel like there is. I don't want to turn it into this notion that that it needs to be rationalized, or that the way people feel needs to be turned into something. Like, if you feel this way, it's okay, and if you feel this way, it's not okay. No, all of it's okay. It's nothing wrong with what you're feeling. But to enter into that feeling and, I don't know, kind of with in the way that, well, it's interesting because all this is coming up as compassion. Guan Yin, Bodhisattva of compassion. And something I've always struggled with in my life, this will be a topic for another time, but is this notion of compassion in religion. Because it talks about, oh yeah, compassion for all. It's like, no, wait a minute. There are some people where it's like, no, I couldn't find compassion for them. And what I kind of found in my own life is really, until I could find the compassion for myself and all the ways that I would torture myself, long after negative things had happened. But the way I picked up that negative thing and continued to torture myself with it long after, in finding a way to in finding a way towards being kind to myself, in that not writing the story about I should or shouldn't be or should have been, or things must be, or you made me feel like, no. I mean, you can do things that hurt me, but for me to perpetuate that feeling on and on after you've gone, that's on me. And to kind of feel into that is to let go of, and again, with all this knowing, let go of all this knowing of who I am and who, I can't be or should be, or all those kinds of things, letting go of all that. And somewhere in all that I'm not really sure about at this moment is I begin to feel into what into some form of compassion for the perpetrators of terrible things. Not in the sense that what they did is okay, but more along the lines of, for someone that would go, I don't know, murder a lot of people or the rest of that kind of thing, how do you have to live internally to reach a point where you're actually willing to do that? That's deeply tortured inside. And in getting to know my own monsters inside that torture over and over and over, 24/7, never take a break. And entering into that, I don't know, at some point there was something where, yeah, I could see how um, there's a side that has to grow cold, that has to isolate itself, that has to disconnect, that has to make it stop. Um, and that's what hurts. That's what would love compassion, a hug, you know. Um, and it's not about, I don't know how to really step into that because I'm not trying to say everything's okay or or and I'm not trying to add additional pain and torture into the situation, but I'm trying to meet the situation for what it is without bringing in knowing what should or shouldn't be, and just having met my own demons, um, or as I would put it, let's take a family photo together, right? And and to begin to uh, release, I guess, if you will, my own internal demons of whatever. But in doing that, they kind of wandered off. But I also found how much I was really hurting myself, and how much I had my own stories about, well, yes, but if I let them go, God knows, well, who knows what'll happen. It's not just bad things will happen. It's like anything could happen, and there was nothing worse. At least that's what I thought at the time. And what I kind of noticed in that is, in the process of preventing my demons from overrunning everything, um, I had to cage them and chain them up. But what it also meant is they could never get away. So, I could only cage them and chain them up with me. So what did they do? They scratched, they tore, they ripped at me. Um, to get away. I didn't want it, they didn't want it, and yet we kind of attached ourselves to each other, you know, uh, in the effort of preventing something when uh, it was just kind of like a pain amplifier. And I can only kind of wonder, in as I've entered into those places in myself, um, how much pain. I can't help but wonder how much pain enters the world because of how we attempt to manage and sometimes fail to, well, I guess we fail, right? Versus succeeding to manage your own pain, right? Um, how much that really, how much we poison ourselves by uh, refusing to let go of the poison because we insist on knowing that this is the only way to manage it. You know, how we insist on saying, no, I don't need help, or I got this, or you wouldn't understand, or all the ways we put up all those obstacles to make sure there's no way anything can be different while continuing to imprison those things that we torture ourselves with. Because just because I don't let it go doesn't mean it doesn't continue to work on me. So the very thing that continues to poison the well of myself, I won't let go of. And it's interesting because that kind of feels to me like that's how the ashes come about, is I hold on to things and absolutely refuse to let, and anything, I refuse to let anything change. I insist upon knowing that this is how it has to be, and the deadwood stacks up and stacks up and stacks up in the psyche until such point that I don't know, an inevitable event happens in the world, and it all catches on fire because it's long dried out and cracked, and it burns. And it burns it all down. And it kind of reaches, and that's what helplessness feels like, is watching all of it collapse. In a way where I can never put it back. And I can either kind of lean into that and sort of like, now what? Change is underway. The boulder has started rolling. Not that I necessarily know what to do, or well, how are we going to manage the rolling? Can we put it over here? Can we, run it up a runaway truck ramp and stop this? Can we, or again, try to enter here, try to discover, what's emerging, or if nothing else, maybe just ask for help. I don't know. But I guess that's kind of what ashes feel like to me. And in its own way, and that's sort of where I just can't help but smile and feel peaceful these days, is there is a phoenix in those ashes. There is light in the dark. But first it burns. And that hurts. So I don't know where you are in your journey, but you're not alone. No. Although, at times I feel like it, which is another series of things I guess I want to talk about, like isolation and the feeling of alone, and the rest of it is, does it feel like it sometimes? Oh yeah. Yeah, it's the worst. I know more than a little bit about that. But that's for another time. Instead, think this is enough. Yeah. You are more powerful than you can possibly imagine. And you are worthy of love. Good night.